Welcome to Krav Life. I am Paul Simos, and today I have a special guest with me, Mr. John Whitman. How are you doing, sir?
Very well. How are you?
Not doing too bad. Can't complain. So where are you calling us from today?
I'm in Los Angeles, California.
Perfect. And I'm assuming it's just all snow-filled and everything there?
The weather's always terrible here. Nobody else should come.
Yeah.
No, the truth is we're having a mild
that's
week
what I
overcast day. It's, the stereotype of LA is accurate. It is pretty nice weather all the time. We do get, cloudy sometimes, and in the fall and winter, the temperature dips way down to about 70 degrees Celsius, or 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So, it's rough.
Yeah, I don't know how you survive that. So for the people in our audience who may not know who you are, can you give us just a little quick background on yourself?
Sure. Again, my name is John Whitman. I am a 6th degree black belt in Krav Maga. I started my training in 1991 with really it was the Israeli Krav Maga Association, but back then it was the American branch of that, run by Darren Levine. I've been training in Krav Maga since then nonstop. I obviously kept getting promoted as far as belts and ranks go. I became the president of Krav Maga Worldwide when it was founded, about 1998 or really 2000. I was president of that company for 8 years, then had a parting of the ways and founded the Krav Maga Alliance, which has been in existence since about that time, since about 2008 or 9. We have, pre-COVID, I would have told you over 130 affiliates around the world. Post-COVID, or in the middle of COVID, we have about 100 affiliates around the world. Most in the US, but we have a lot in Europe as well, and some in Asia. And that's it. I've trained civilians and military and law enforcement for, over 2 decades, heading close to 3 decades in terms of my teaching career. I have been to Israel a bunch of times. My certifications are from Wingate Institute from way back in the day. And then I actually went back to Wingate to get my 5th degree black belt. Just because I wanted to do it there and kind of not have it be the capstone, because I like to think I'm still growing, and hopefully we're all still growing. But I wanted it to be there. So I went back to Wingate and got tested for my 5th degree black belt there. So those are the highlights.
Nice. So how did you get involved in Krav Maga? And did you take other martial arts before, or was Krav Maga the first one?
Krav Maga was the first one that I dedicated a lot of energy to. I'd had a couple experiences earlier in life that were not comfortable, let's put it that way, and wanted some answers. And just because there was nothing else around where I was at the time, I started with Taekwondo. I didn't stay with it long. And for your audience who knows Krav Maga, no offense to Taekwondo, I think there's some really interesting sportive aspects to it. But if you're looking for self-defense, you realize pretty quickly, if you've had some bad experiences, that's not the thing that's going to answer your questions. So I didn't stick with it, and I shopped around a little bit. I tried some boxing. I tried somebody who advertised themselves as a street, self-defense person. You can always pick up good things anywhere, but none of it satisfied me. And then and I found my first Krav Maga really introductory seminar at the University of Judaism in Los Angeles in October of 1991, and literally I've been doing it ever since. Wow.
So from that seminar, how did you get into the classes then? Because if it was just a seminar.
So at the time, and this really, again, this is a long time ago, especially for any of your audience who are a bit younger. This is 1991. And if you think about now and then, you might meet somebody who's not in the martial arts world, so they don't know what Krav Maga is. Back then, nobody knew what Krav Maga was. There was actually somebody on the East Coast doing a little bit of Krav Maga training. But basically, as far as getting Krav Maga in the United States, there were 200 people in Los Angeles doing it, and that was it. So what was happening then through the University of Judaism was there was no school. They rented space on a dance floor at the university. and they would do these 6-week courses. So what I went to was the intro. It was basically here's a little seminar about what Krav Maga is. If you like it, sign up and train with us for the next 6 weeks. And then they would take a 2-week break, and they would just do the whole thing over again. So the intro seminar was, a chance for them to get more students. And my wife and I did it together. And literally, it answered the questions I had based on the bad experience I had. And I knew right away it's what I wanted to do. And I jumped in and signed up and was training. I've been, like I said, I've been doing it almost every day, but certainly every week of my life since 1991.
And then from those 6-week courses, how did that evolve from there?
Well, it grew. I mean, I mentioned 200 people. When I started, I was not the first. Like Darren Levine, who really sort of grew Krav Maga, I would say in the U.S., but people might dispute that. But really, he's the guy who started things and really made them grow in the United States. Those 200 people became 300 and 400 people. I actually can remember at this tiny little dance floor, the room was packed. People were spilling out onto the balcony outside of it. It got huge. And at that point, I was still, I guess I was just becoming an instructor back then. But the group of people who had started before me saw an opportunity to really take the training to the next level. So at that time, they created, and I say they because really they were the heart of it at that point. I was an investor at that point, and I was a teacher at that point. But there was really a group that led the charge before me. They created what was called the Krav Maga National Training Center, and at this point, the politics of Krav Maga weren't very fractured. There absolutely were some fractures at this point, but nothing like we see these days. And so at that point, it was still pretty much the Israeli Krav Maga Association, or its branch in the U.S. called Krav Maga Association of America. And that group put together what at the time was the premier training center really anywhere in the world. It was located here in Los Angeles. It was and still is a great facility for training. And they just need a bigger space in which to do better training. And so a lot of us pooled our resources and started the Krav Maga National Training Center. And like any business, I think it took a couple of years to really, really become stable. But as a training facility, it was amazing from day one. And people could see that. And it just grew. And out of that idea came the idea of what was and still is Krav Maga Worldwide, which is a very big Krav Maga organization. So there was the Krav Maga Association of America first. That basically grew beyond its means, and then that group opened the Krav Maga National Training Center, and then out of that was created Krav Maga Worldwide.
Okay, and so how did you end up associated with Krav Maga Worldwide?
So again, I was part of all this as it was happening, and by the time the National Training Center was really, really not up, it was up and running long before this, but by the time it was really viable, I was already one of the prime instructors, and one hesitates to say this about other people in the room, but one of the leaders of the group, and there was this recognition that the Krav Maga Association of America, which was a nonprofit, and by the way, it still exists and it's still a nonprofit. But any of the artists who's been involved in business knows that you can only do so much with a nonprofit, right? By definition, it can pay its executives and its officers, but it's not there to make a profit. So while it still exists and still does, as far as I know, really good volunteer work, the decision was made, let's make a for-profit company where we can actually have investors and grow it. And yes, we're going to make money, but our goal is to spread Krav Maga in a more efficient way than a nonprofit can. That was, and I'm definitely putting words in the mouths of some other people, some former associates of mine, but I think they'd all agree that that's pretty much the thought process. The mission really was to keep spreading Krav Maga, but through an organization more efficient than a nonprofit. So at the time, I was actually the executive editor of Time Warner audiobooks. That's what I was doing for a real job. And I was lucky enough to make some extra money. I also write books. I'm a writer on the side. And I was lucky enough to be making enough money writing books that I was thinking of leaving that job anyway. I'd been with Time Warner Audiobooks for years. I really liked it, but I was kind of done. So I was thinking anyway, right about that time, the group I've been referring to was talking about forming Krav Maga worldwide. And at the beginning of that, they asked me to come in and basically to organize the training curriculum. One of the missions of Worldwide, like a lot of organizations these days, was to spread Krav Maga by meeting new instructors, certified new instructors from other schools, and basically getting people to add a Krav Maga program to their existing martial arts school. That was the vision at the time. And my job at that point was to basically, I'm going to say, create the instructor program. The truth is, a lot of work had been done before me. What I really did was take, just like some of you, anybody who's been through a Wingate certification, there was a Wingate certification, and then Krav Maga Association of America adapted that for its own uses with Wingate's permission. And then I took that material and codified it into what became the instructor training program for Krav Maga Worldwide. That's how I started. And then along the way, I was then asked to become the president of the company.
Oh, nice. And how long were you president for?
About 8 years, again, from, I'm going to say roughly 2000 to 2008.
Okay. And then you split with Worldwide and started your own organization?
Krav Maga Alliance, yeah.
All right. And can I ask why you split with Worldwide?
Sure. Yeah. This, by the way, I don't shy away from the politics, but I do try and be discreet. To be honest with you, the simplest way to put it is this. Krav Maga Worldwide is a company. Like any other company, it's got a right to hire and fire its executives at every level. And that group, I was on the board, but the board overall made a decision to make a change. And they have every right to do that, and they had a right to it. Like anybody who gets pushed out, I wish they had done some things better or handled things a little bit differently. But as far as them deciding to replace me, the company had every right to do it. To be frank, I had some real loyalty struggles right afterwards. It was hard for me to emotionally give up on a thing that I put a lot of work in myself, both as a volunteer before Krav Maga Worldwide and then as the president afterwards. But ultimately, I decided I loved Krav Maga and I wanted to stay with it. So I did two things that I would say made a drastic cut in the relationship. I decided to open my own gym, also in LA, and I decided to start Krav Maga Alliance. And frankly, if you don't mind me telling the story, the reason I did Krav Maga Alliance was because I'd been so involved in Worldwide, a bunch of people who were affiliates, they were clients of Worldwide, but their connection was with me. And that's not anybody's fault. It was just my job, right? So that's a natural thing. It happens. Every school owner who might watch this podcast knows that sometimes an instructor leaves your school, and even if they're not trying to screw you over, when they leave, some people want to go with them because they have a connection with them. Right? Nobody's doing anything wrong. It's just what happens. And that's what happened. There were a bunch of school owners and affiliates who had known me best and wanted to keep working with me. And I hope this is entertaining for your audience, but the funny part was I literally didn't want to start an organization at the beginning. I did not. I had about 4 or 5 guys who were ready to test for black belts. And they called me and said, John, we've known you forever, and you've done all of our certifications. We want to do our black belt with you. And I had real conversations. I said, guys, I'm happy to test you. I'm happy to write a letter saying that you are black belt, but I don't have an organization to back it up, and not even a logo to back it up with. But if you want to come test, I'll test you. And they did. They came. And so these 3 or 4 guys test for black belts, and they were also awesome. So I passed them. And of course, each one of them, after the fact, wrote to me and said, "John, great! I'm so glad I passed. Thanks so much. Can you give me a diploma of some kind?" So I literally had to. I had a friend who years ago had made a logo of his own design for Krav Maga. He pitched it to me when I was the president of Worldwide, and I said, "Well, this is a nice logo, but we can't use it. We've spent years branding our logo. I'm not going to have a separate one for the company." I called that guy up from years later. I said, "That logo you showed me 5 years ago, do you still have it?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Can I buy it off you?" He said, "Yes." And then I said, great, I've got a logo. And literally that same afternoon, I came up with the name Krav Maga Alliance. And all of a sudden there's an organization. It went from not wanting to have it in the first place to suddenly one afternoon I had it.
And well, obviously you would have had prior experience running an organization, but what challenges did Alliance have in the beginning then?
The same challenges any organization has, being a fairly small fish, right? At that point, especially through the efforts of a lot of people, including my own efforts, Krav Maga Worldwide had become the big player, right? And so I was basically now competition with a company I had helped create. And my reaction to that was to start small intentionally. We really, for years, even to this day, Krav Maga Alliance doesn't really advertise. We're not out there proselytizing at all. We grew organically. I basically told people, look, I've got an organization now. If you want to join us, you're welcome to. We're trying to do good work for affiliates and people who work with us, but I'm focused on the people that we have. I'm not trying to grow. And to be honest with you, that methodology worked. It was a slow growth. It wasn't like, we had 100 affiliates overnight, but it worked really well. I just focused on the people that were involved, and sure enough, more and more people joined.
Nice. And what is your vision for the future of Alliance? Like, where do you want it to go?
Well, I'm just like most people, I'm just making sure we survive COVID.
Yes.
That really honestly has been our goal for the last 18 months now. My vision prior to that was like the vision of any organization. I'd like to grow. I want to provide good service. Like I want to be an organization that provides both training opportunities and skills and basically good programming for our affiliates, but also business side. We do things now. This is now post-COVID. This is my efforts to confirm that vision after COVID. We do videos for our instructors and our school owners called 15-minute mentors. And I don't know how involved you are in the business side, or if any of your audience is our school owners, but I've been to a lot of martial arts seminars trying to learn how to grow my own business. And there's a ton of useful content you get from those conventions. But in my opinion, you go to somebody's 2-hour presentation and there's maybe 15 minutes of really good stuff packed in with a lot of other stuff, less useful material, let's say. So my goal is to make these short videos that pack it down as one specific topic. We'll do one hyper-focused topic about the business side of running a martial arts school, Krav Maga specifically, and we make a video on that. We do things. I want everybody who's involved in Krav Maga to be badass on the mat and badass in their business.
Nice. And does Alliance train instructors to serve like all levels, like civilian, military, police?
Yeah, we do a course. Mostly it's civilians, right? That's the biggest part. Most school owners are civilians. We have a law enforcement and military side. It's run by a gentleman named Jeremy Stafford, who is currently serving police officer. He served in Iraq as a Marine. He has a Bronze Star with a V for Valor in Iraq. And he has a team that works with him to do that side of things. This is actually a long answer to your question, but it is an answer to your question about civilians versus law enforcement. On the law enforcement side, we divide into the two different groups. We train law enforcement officers themselves, and our motto for the force training division for us is for warriors by warriors. So the people on the mat doing teaching for law enforcement officers are always active serving law enforcement. We just believe in doing that for those guys. We also have a civilian course that is law enforcement training for civilian instructors. And the goal of that is not to pretend that suddenly those civilians know what it's like to be a police officer, but it is meant to inform them of what it's like so that their Krav Maga training for those officers is better. So we make those civilians go through, most of them already know Krav Maga pretty well. So it's a week-long course for those civilians. There's a lot of Krav Maga in there, but that's not actually the focus. The focus is on what it's like to make a traffic stop, make a radio call under stress, right? Arrest and control procedures, all those things that officers have to do and use, especially under stress, that is outside the everyday experience of the civilians. And it really helps those civilians become better teachers of police officers. Because as you know, sometimes, a lot of times really, the police officers, they're not coming in sponsored by their department. They're coming in on their own, right?
Yeah.
They're in a civilian class with a civilian instructor, but their needs are different. So we try and give those civilian instructors deeper insight into not only how to teach Krav Maga to those officers, but what it's like to be on the job.
Okay, well, that's kind of cool. And so for how do I phrase it? So what is the Krav Maga Alliance advantage then? So
We're smaller and nimble. That's what I would have told you for years and years. At this point, we're actually getting pretty big. So I'm not sure we're as nimble as we used to be. And of course, this is a question you asked to somebody who's biased, right? I have my own bias about my answer to you, but we have a genuine care and concern for the affiliates, not just for making Krav Maga badass, but making them good ambassadors of Krav Maga, both, as I said before, on the mat and as a business. I want them all to be successful because I want Krav Maga to be successful. And I don't mean to offend anybody who listens to the podcast and has the opposite view, but I don't think it helps anybody's case when we are intentionally doing Krav Maga in gritty rooms, in basements, and keeping it like hardcore with blood on the mats. By the way, a lot of us started that way. I can remember starting that way, right? I have no issue with somebody who if you have to start, lean and mean, do it. But the goal should be to make the training professional and useful in an environment that's also professional and useful. So I want my vision for Krav Maga is that it stays, as I said a minute ago, badass, but that our execution as individual organizations, as your school and my school and the school that one of your listeners is going to, runs professionally and effectively, that also represents Krav Maga well.
So how do you balance that though? So you obviously want to teach in a very safe environment, legal reasons and all that other stuff, and we don't want people getting hurt, but also get the person the experience that they need so that they can effectively implement Krav Maga when they need it.
So the idea of aggressive training and what I think we would all call realistic training is not mutually exclusive from what I just said. In fact, I would argue that they actually go together. The more professional you make your environment, again, even if you're starting in the park, for a time after I left Worldwide or was pushed out of Worldwide, I did training in a park, right? That's how I started to survive when I had to regrow myself. I'm not talking about your financial resources. I'm talking about your attitude toward the organization or the training that you're creating. It can be very, very small scale, and you can always do realistic training, but the attitude around it should be, this is a professional thing that we're doing. We're taking it seriously. I take every aspect of the training of my own school seriously, and that includes its look and its feel and all those things. But when we got on the mat, I mean, I do drills that are as aggressive as drills I was doing back in 1991. There's no distinction between those things. And again, my argument would be, the more professional you make your own environment, the more opportunity you have for better training and more aggressive training.
That's a good perspective. So how would you bring someone new in to the studio, like basically introducing them into the world of Krav Maga without kind of scaring them off, I guess? So
our program, and this might be a little bit unique to other people. We have an intro class, but I have what I call an on-ramp program of 6 classes that someone has to go through before they jump into the regular class. And we actually tell people as they join that they're going to do real Krav Maga in that intro class. It's real Krav Maga, but it is definitely an introductory class. And the reason that I do it this way is to address exactly what you and I are kind of touching on right now. I want people's first experience in Krav Maga to be both as real as possible and as, that's not the right word, but as comfortable as possible. I want them not to be scared off. And
Yeah.
for me, that specialized intro class allows me to do that, because I can say with complete sincerity, both to the badass Krav Maga warrior who's asking how I'm doing things and the brand new person who's never done it before, I can say to both of them, look, this class is going to show you what Krav Maga is like, but it's going to ease you in. When you go to the regular class, things are going to ramp up a little bit. They're going to be more challenging, and you'll be fine. By the time you finish these 6 classes with us, you'll be ready for that. But you're not going to start there. If a regular Krav Maga beginner class is going at 70 miles an hour, I don't want my beginner to be thrown onto that street, right? Yeah. I want them to get on a car that drives slowly, and by day 6, it's going 70, right? But I don't want them to have to be thrown onto it. And this class allows me to admit that look, you're going to do real Krav Maga. They're punching, kicking, doing drills, getting some. If they're brand new, they might scrape their knuckles up. They're going to be pushed around, but at a slightly lower level than even a beginner class. And because I have this separate class for it, it allows me to admit that fully. And if some big-chested Krav Maga person wants to come in and say, hey, that class is not intense enough, I'm going to say, you're right. It's their first class, their intro. Look at the class in the next room. Go check out that one. Yeah, and it works.
Nice. So what do you view as kind of like the biggest problem or hurdle that the Krav Maga industry has to overcome collectively?
Well, there are several. I'm happy to talk about them.
Sure.
By the way, again, I think Krav Maga is great. I mean, I've dedicated 30 years of my life to it. I have no issues with, I have no broad issues saying Krav Maga has got to make these massive changes. There are smaller changes. And one of them is the one that I mentioned. I feel like, and I'm happy to be corrected on this if someone can give me other data, but I feel like Krav Maga's ethos of not really being a martial art has steered a lot of people away from some of those martial arts practices that are actually beneficial. And now there's a danger in those traditional martial arts practices that have a little bit more formality. By the way, we are not formal at all in my school. Nobody calls me anything but John. Some of the structure there is beneficial, both to the practitioner and to the instructor. And I think that a lot of Krav Maga shies away from that because it touches on an area that Krav Maga tries to avoid, which is we are not a traditional martial art. We don't want to be. But that doesn't mean we can't borrow some organizational structures from those things that, again, help students. I want to deliver good training to my students. So I want my students to be safer. Anything that I can do to structure the delivery of that information to make their learning faster, I want to do. So I think that Krav Maga as an entity around the world could do a little bit more of that. And the other thing I'm going to say, which may piss off some people, is I think that we need to recognize the limits of reality-based training versus combat sports.
Can you explain that a bit further? Yes.
And I believe this gap is already being bridged by a lot of people, hopefully including my organization, but a lot of other people as well. That idea that, well, we don't do MMA because there are no rules in MMA. They can't kick to the groin, they can't bite, they can't gouge, etc. Now, I like to do groin kicks, and I talk to my students all the time about biting and gouging and scratching. But the idea that we can't learn anything from the people who are fighting at near 100% every time they get into the ring is silly. There's a lot we can learn from them. We have to be smart enough to recognize where we can pick up good information and where we can't, but there's a ton to learn. So I'll give you an example. In my own organization, if you want to get a black belt in the Krav Maga Alliance, you have to do at least one ring fight. You have to. Now, of course, I assume like a lot of your listeners, we spar all the time. And the sparring you do, for instance, just for your black belt itself with us, like with probably other organizations, it's terrible. Like, it's hard. Like you get your ass kicked. But my argument is that, and I have been both the person getting my ass kicked in a black belt test, and I've been the person kicking other people's butts, right? I've been one of the fresh fighters jumping out. I've been on both sides of it. I know that as hard as it is, it's not the same as going into the ring where someone really, really wants to do you damage. And I want everybody who's been, who gets a black belt with us to do that, to go into the ring. Yes, there are rules. Yes, there are no groin kicks, but there's also nobody who's going to stop the fight or slow down or ease up a little bit when you get your bell rung. And your audience is going to deny this. A lot of people listening are saying, no, not at my school, but I don't care. I'm sorry. I'm going to insult you. Every test I've ever done, ever seen, ever been involved in, the people who come in to like beat up the person who's testing for their black belt, oh, they hurt them. They kick them hard. They punch them hard. But when they get punched and their bells run a little bit, the people who are fighting them, they keep punching, kicking, but they ease up 10, 20%. And they're off. And they're like, you got to keep going, keep going. You got to keep going. Now, for the test, okay, I like that. But that's not going to happen in the ring. In the ring, you get your bell rung and that person smells blood and they're going to hurt you until the referee stops them. And I want my people to experience that. So there's an example of something that I feel like that Krav Maga overall needs to embrace more of. And in my experience, I travel a lot to do seminars. I know lots and lots of individuals, some people probably watching this podcast, who on their own are doing that. They are doing more combat sports training to get more of that fight experience. So I think it's happening a lot on the level of the individual practitioner. I see it. I think it's fantastic. I don't know how much is happening on the level of organizations. And I've taken a lot of, I'm rambling now a little bit, I'm sorry, but I've taken a lot of flack for putting this requirement into my organization, but I don't care. I see it making our people better at fighting and better at self-defense because they have that experience.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that there's a lot to be learned from cross training with MMA or Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but like isn't it like most newer Kravists are kind of like converts from like karate or a different martial art or took the program that was added at their studio. Is there a danger that they're going to take that sport aspect and make Krav Maga more sport-like because of it? Because you don't have the guys like yourself that originally trained, with the Israelis and all that stuff that know the difference between, this is what works in the field, this is sport.
Yeah, no, I think that danger absolutely exists, but and I'd like to elaborate on that, what I perceive as that danger, but the alternative also exists. The alternative is, and I think we're seeing that now. Again, I'm speaking very broad-based. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I know plenty of people, and I've seen plenty of schools where people are, green belts, blue belts, brown belts, and they know self-defense techniques, but they can't really fight. So I agree with you completely that there's a danger in allowing Krav Maga to become too sportive. And we have to find ways not to allow that to happen. But the danger that we're currently experiencing, in my opinion, is people think because they do reality-based self-defense, they don't need to know how to fight. And the problem, in my opinion, is that every single self-defense situation, every single one, becomes a fight. Now, if we're doing Krav Maga the way you and I probably imagine to be, Krav Maga is explosive and aggressive, and you make that choke defense or block that knife attack, and you're aggressive. And we're hoping that it's a fight because of that aggressive attitude plus technique that we are dominating. That's what we want it to be, but it's still a fight. And I think that there are, based on my experience, a lot of people who do reality-based self-defense who know how to do really good self-defense techniques, but don't understand the fight that is most likely going to happen afterwards.
And
so I think that's the current danger. We're already in that danger. That's the problem I would like us to solve. And yes, we have to figure out a way not to fall to the other end of the spectrum and make it too sportive.
Exactly. And so how are you addressing as well, like other than making them do one fight? Are there other ways that you're addressing that in your organization?
Yeah, and the first thing I'm going to say is not unique to us by any means. I know plenty of schools that do this, whether they're Krav Maga or other types of reality-based self-defense. We have a separate fighting class, and I make my students do the fighting class. For us to get, I believe it starts at so I know if people do a belt system, they're slightly different from organization to organization, but mine is yellow, orange, green, blue, brown, black. Right, that's pretty standard. For us, when you go from orange to green, you have to do a certain number attend a certain number of fight classes just to qualify to take a green belt test. So is that person a great fighter? No, but we make them experience sparring before they even could take that test. We kind of put that into our culture and their requirements as early as possible. And now we're back to this idea as I said before about I want training to be safe and ease up. I don't make my people testing for yellow belt. I don't make them do that class. They can just do regular Krav Maga. By the time they're belt past that, they have to do some actual sparring in a class that's focused on sparring.
All right. And what kind of sparring is that class? Is it just kind of like straight kickboxing? Is it a more MMA style fighting? Is it both?
Yeah, and that this leads us into the trying not to fall too far to the other side of the equation. I have two types of sparring at my school. And again, other schools in the Krav Maga Alliance, they're free to do their own adjustments of this. No one's required in my organization to do exactly what I do. I just give advice on what seems to be working for us. But I have a Muay Thai class, and in that class, there are no groin kicks. And then I have sparring in the Krav Maga class. So in our advanced Krav Maga classes, actually also our intermediate Krav Maga classes, they spar. And in those classes, you kick to the groin.
Okay.
So basically, if you want to do Muay Thai, you're going to learn great skills and you're going to get really good experience about getting punched and kicked and clinched. But we're not going to kick you in the groin in the Krav Maga class. Anything goes, man. Get ready for it.
So what kind of protective equipment are you using in that class then?
Well, they're wearing cups, obviously. But they should wear that anyway. So. And it is what it is. We're if it's Krav Maga, we're training to do that stuff. The really hard thing about trying to apply Krav Maga to sparring is the biting and gouging, right? That's the stuff that you can't really do. So for those, we have to address specific drills, just to encourage people to keep that as part of their arsenal. That's the hard part. The groin kicks are pretty easy to incorporate.
Yeah. Okay. So, what do you think of like the use of equipment, like how Tony Blauer has like the full body suit, and they have like their matches that are just basically full contact? What do you think of training like that?
So I actually have some of those suits. I think they're great. It's a great product. I use those more for seminars for my attackers who are going to take a lot of impact. I don't use those suits, the Tony Blauer suit that you're referring to. I don't use them for my sparring class. We put a headgear and gloves and shin guards, and then we fight. But I think those suits are incredibly useful when you want to give, especially newer people, but anybody, the feeling of real impact, really punching a person, but keeping that person, the other person, safe. So I use them. I have my attackers wear them during self-defense seminars, but I usually don't use them for sparring.
All right. So just to kind of have an end note here, what would you, if you were to give advice to the industry as a whole, right? Because let's face it, you're one of the people that is probably the most qualified to do this, right? Considering your experience, what sort of tip or advice would you give the industry as a whole?
I believe a lot of people listening are already doing this, and their schools probably are, but it's the main piece of advice. Keep finding ways to test the techniques more and more realistically. That's challenging because safety is a factor, right? But find ways to take the techniques and essentially beat them up. Don't believe them because I said so. Don't believe them because their instructor said so. Don't believe them because their friend told them it was going to work. Find ways to test them and be willing to make changes where change needs to be made. I think Krav Maga is a great system, but it can always be refined. And I can tell you about things we did 30 years ago that we haven't done. We in the world haven't done in 2 decades, because you know what? As smart as Emi was, and as smart as people around him were, and as experienced they all were, both in martial arts and in real war, people come to things with bias. I do, you do, and there's always a tendency to keep something in because you're fond of it or because your instructor told you how to do it. There's always fat in the system. And as long as all of us as a group are always challenging that and testing that, I think slowly and hopefully wisely will trim that fat away. I think that is a group effort. That can't be John Whitman saying, no, that technique's terrible, get rid of it. Because some people will believe me and some people will disagree with me with good reason. And some will disagree because I'm from a different organization, right?
Right.
So it can't be one person dictating. But if as a group we're always testing things, I think the group mind will slowly and again, wisely refine the system more and more. And that's a good thing.
Awesome. Good advice. So I want to thank you for being on the show. If someone wanted to get into contact with you, what's the best way to do it?
Just our website is KravMagaAlliance.com. There's an email there. You can email our staff and it'll definitely reach me. There's also stuff out there. You can see that we have an app called Krav Maga Pro, and I'm the author of a couple of books that are out there. But honestly, if we are a pretty responsive organization, if somebody tries to find me through KravMagaAlliance.com, they'll reach me.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for being on the show, sir. And
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a great talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.